So thank you for coming this morning. This morning I'm going to be talking about cloud and hosting, building the case for change, and mainly how we look at cloud hosting and how the businesses will make the case to actually start moving into the cloud environment. So there's a couple of things that I'll be going through initially, and then we'll be working with panel members here. Again, we have John Harris, CIO of Servco Pacific Inc., and then we also have Keone Kali, Deputy CIO and Acting CIO for the state of Hawaii. So cloud and hosting, what is it, and let's make the case. So businesses are trying to decide what to do with this cloud thing. They're trying to understand it and trying to make the case to move into the cloud. Should I do it? Should I not do it? What are the ramifications of doing so, the expenses? And so we're going to talk a little bit about some of those facets and looking at the pathways to the cloud. So at the very bottom initially, we have colocation. Everyone's pretty much familiar with this, this act of putting servers in the data center. And this is usually the first step that customers are looking to make the change into the cloud. So whether you're already in a data center right now, or you're looking at moving into the data center, and we'll go over that a little bit more, but whether you're, the data center is where it starts, the colocation umbrella, and that's where usually the cloud starts from there. So in the data center, in the data center realm, we look at colocation as encompassing the cloud as well. So what I'll be talking about today a little bit more, focusing on the virtual colocation piece of it, which is more the cloud that most of you are familiar with right now, and then talking about how we expand on that and actually make the move to that. Okay, so physical colocation, right now a lot of companies are putting, they understand this is the tangible piece of the cloud. So in connecting everything, as you heard the keynote speaker this morning, and Gary talked about how everything's going to be connected in the cloud, and it usually starts with the physical data center, and that's where everything hubs back to, and the connectivity going back to those facilities. So you look at these physical facilities as the back end of the cloud, and you'll see they talked about a little bit about that this morning as well. So in basic physical colocation, the customer just leases space and power to protect their facilities. Most of the buildings that you're in now weren't designed to handle the power loads and the infrastructure that's required for the housing of this critical infrastructure, whether it be your private clouds or just your internal systems there. This is mainly a protective proposition, and this is generally where a lot of companies the cloud often starts from here on. Overall, the physical colocation environment has provided a lot of stable computing environments within a lot of companies moving those out to stabilize their equipment. You don't have to deal with the power, leasing, and kind of outsourcing this critical infrastructure. And just like the cloud, where you outsource resources, this is the physical aspect of the cloud that most people are familiar with, the tangible piece of it. So what is the cloud? Okay, all right, so right up there I have a little definition based on NIST of what the cloud is, and it's one of these long, boring definitions. It's like cloud computing is the model of enabling convenient, on-demand network, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so you can see what the actual definition of the cloud is there, defined by the National Institute of Standards there. And then basically it's a shared pool of configurable resources and applications and services that can be rapidly provisioned. And that's basically what the cloud's all about, is the sharing of resources and actually utilizing resources that are provided by others. So the origins of the cloud. The phrase originates from the cloud symbol used in charts and diagrams. So everyone has one of those charts where you drew the network diagram, and in the middle you have this cloud, and everyone said that was the internet, right? And now it's being referenced as that's how the definition or the term came about, was that little cloud that's on almost every network diagram that you've ever drawn. And that's where people put their stuff. It wasn't really defined what was out there, but that's where it was, and so the cloud came to that being. Personally, we don't like the term cloud because it just means so many different things. It could mean anything, and it's sort of a ubiquitous term that everyone uses throughout the industry, but narrowing it down, it could be a number of different things, including infrastructure as a service, software as a service. You have your public clouds, your private clouds, and so we're going to just narrow that down a little bit in making the case and where to start. Okay, the first public reported use of the phrase of the cloud was in August of 2006, and that was in San Jose by the Google CEO. And basically, everyone it's predicted that he was just trying to one-up the Amazon's EC2. So you have these two titans that were vying for this space early on back in 2006. And it doesn't seem like that long ago, but from 2006 to the current, the cloud has progressed quite tremendously since then. Okay, and then in a sign of ever internet wars, again, Google was just trying to preempt the EC2 rollout for Amazon there. Okay, so what does the cloud deliver? Okay, the cloud can afford an IT staff the ability to leverage resources and greater ease in execution. And that's what the cloud's all about, is leveraging resources. No longer do you have to bring provision servers, like physical hardware, load the hardware, transfer the data. We can do that much easier in the cloud with fewer resources. I've seen nowadays, used to be standard fare for a server to come in and you load it up and then you take the time. It's going to take a couple of weeks to load the server and get it ready to go. Now I see a lot of technical staffs when they get a server in front of them, it looks like an alien just landed on the table there. They're like, oh, we haven't loaded one of these in a while. What do we do with it? So it's really changed that much in a very short period of time. The administrative headaches are greatly reduced, and this allows the businesses to focus a lot more on what their core competencies are and not maintaining the back-end infrastructure. And that's what we really want to do, is reduce the amount of distractors in the cloud there. You just want it to run. It becomes almost as natural as turning on the light or a utility, or that to the point where a lot of customers will take it for granted, which means that it's doing its job. You don't really care where it is, you just know that it's working for you. Okay. And the more that's moved to the cloud, the less hardware, software, and bandwidth and management that the customer or entity has to manage at that point. Okay, and also I want to make a comment about if you have consultants or IT staff, and what the cloud will do for them too is a lot of consultants will try and keep that infrastructure inside of the facility or the customer premise, and the cloud is about moving that out. And what the cloud will do for the consultants on that piece of it is making the case that it requires less resourcing. They can actually reach more customers, service more customers remotely, and actually utilize the cloud connectivity to actually provide better service for the customer and the end users. Okay. So I really want to talk about, everyone, when they talk about the cloud, it's like, what is it? How much does it cost? We're worried about this ROI. And so everyone knows what this ROI thing is what are my returns on? You can do calculations on the soft costs and the hard costs of doing that. But really, today I wanted to kind of focus on this concept of return on agility. And sometimes in many business cases, the return on agility is actually more valuable than the ROI, or a key component of it. So the return on agility will lower the time to market, and it equals a higher revenue, increased competitive advantage. That means you get your applications out faster. You can get to that market ahead of your competitors faster, and actually it'll decrease time in your project rollouts, will then again yield an ROI that's more beneficial for entities using the cloud. And agility is the main benefit of the cloud, the fact that you're able to move a lot easier. We have customers that we've seen that actually can be turned up before the phone call is over. They can come provision and they'll be right up and running and engineered for their business on a day's notice, whereas the procurement process before actually loading equipment, scheduling downtime, those days are pretty much behind us with the cloud applications. The cloud is not just about the cost reduction. It's in many cases the agility becomes more important, and that's what we're talking about here, is just actually providing a more agile environment for the IT administrators so that they can focus on looking forward and the business productivity and pushing the business forward and propelling the business operations forward instead of actually spending time maintaining it. A lot of IT nowadays with the in-house prem is spent maintaining the equipment, maintaining the environment. And in these cloud environments, you'll be able to focus on additional resources and let someone else worry about those environments and maintaining those environments for you. So this agility is very important. You have other entities that are leveraging, that provide you the cloud resources, so you don't have to worry about provisioning, the maintaining, that's all offloaded. Most companies outsource a number of things that they do. If you have starting out businesses, you have a guy just driving a truck and to do his deliveries, and then his business grows, and then he starts outsourcing the truck drivers to actually grow the business and scale it. And then after that, he'll need more resources, and the more and more is being outsourced. And the cloud functions very much the same way in that function. So instead of hiring people to take care of and drive all those trucks, a lot of companies will outsource that to another company that specializes in that. And so you're getting the best of both worlds and also maintaining that agility. You can focus on other things and let the experts in that arena deal with the cloud pieces of it. Okay, and then again, going over the benefits, you have the focus on the business competencies, and that's the main thing. We've had, there are numerous cases where businesses were outsourced to the cloud. They go in kicking and screaming, but the general response is, why didn't we do this before? Because we're so much more efficient. We don't have to worry about getting these projects rolled out, and we can focus on core competencies. If you look at things like law firms, that's one that we see them outsourcing it to the cloud so they don't have to, they can focus on practicing law and not maintaining those systems. And that provides them a little bit more flexibility, and they can take on more clients, more efficient use of their time, and they can access the data anywhere. And we have this concept of agility going with operational infrastructure within minutes and not months. Before, a few years ago, rolling out a big project or a big SharePoint environment, that took weeks, if not months, to actually roll out tests and go through those processes. But now we can do that in a matter of minutes. And it's very amazing how it's progressed over the last few years. Massive computing projects can be completed in a very short period of time. We've seen rollouts where full MLS systems, which normally would take about 6 to 9 months to roll out, will be rolled out in 1 or 2 months, and cutting down the time drastically, just because it is just in the infrastructure. They didn't have to worry about the infrastructure, maintaining it, planning it, or whatever. They just spun that up very quickly. Typically also in these cloud environments, the hardware is being maintained by someone else, and you're getting pulled into that environment. So this whole time of refreshing your technology and doing these upgrades actually becomes a thing of the past. There's someone else that's doing it for you. And so we want to leverage that in using the cloud. Okay, and then the cloud allows you to adapt to different changing environments as well. So a lot of I don't think there's anyone here that hasn't said, well, we need a server, we need it right now. We need to spin this up to get this project on, we have this deadline. And so that's where the cloud allows you to do that. We spun up things, you have like this Obamacare thing, big IT fiasco, and things that people had to be rolling things up but we've actually worked with companies like the Hawaii Health Connector. When they needed to spin up the environment very quickly to get that online, we were able to just rapidly spin up these servers, and they were able to leverage the cloud to actually provide the infrastructure and the changes to their infrastructure on a moment's notice. And then ultimately what this results in is driving down the costs of experimentation and innovation of change. So going forward, what we encourage is that that companies invest in this proof of concept early in the cloud right now. As you heard in the keynote speaker, they're talking about the Internet of Everything. It's changing very fast, and companies are just trying to keep up with it. And so investing in this proof of concept will make sure that companies are actually poised and ready to take on these kinds of workloads. Moving into the cloud, the change, like I said, is very, very scary, and a lot of people are resistant to change, but you don't have to go all or nothing in going into the cloud. So moving like obvious workloads into the cloud, which might be like the communication systems, your backups, offloading your backups, your email, we see a lot of that right now, and I think that's one of the more prevalent there. Training and video content, mobile applications into the cloud. And not only are you moving these things into the cloud and reducing the workload on your own premises, but making that change going forward is actually making the business operation more efficient at the same time. Typically, these cloud environments have huge data networks that are connected to them, and you have engineers on the background driving these solutions, making the business more effective at that point. So obvious workloads, one of the things that we've seen more prevalent is SharePoint environments. Before everyone's like, what's the cloud, what's the cloud? And then we start mentioning SharePoint, and then everyone wants to go into this environment because it's very easy to roll out applications like SharePoint, web applications, things of that nature. Okay. So right now, that's a little bit about making the case for the cloud. A lot of companies are actually straddling that fence, whether I move into the cloud, whether I move into co-location. And actually, there's no really right generic answer for that. You have to look at your business operations and look at case studies. And then we're going to be talking to John Harris and Keone Kali up here and talking about their experiences with the cloud and seeing how, and as you talk and we talk through this, you'll see how their different use cases based on their businesses and the entities that they're supporting. So with that, we'll go into the little panel session here. And so the first question, and we can start off with Keone, and then we'll go to John on this, is basically how are you leveraging the cloud, and what have been your experience in making that change for the cloud?
Okay, well, the state's journey, is about government service, and we have a lot of legacy systems and legacy, I would say, equipment that's obsolete and it's been around. We have servers that are 12 years old. We even have a VAX still running in the state. I think the last WAN computer was decommissioned in 2011. So we have had a number of challenges, and part of the getting to the cloud, and what we're terming, at least for our purposes, the government private cloud, is a completely hosted environment for our virtualization, so that the departments can platform to virtual, migrate their servers out of their closets into a centralized location. So we're doing a consolidation effort, and what that does for us is a number of things. So the folks that were doing system administration on all their servers in their departments and things like that, and it was occupying, let's say, 85% of their time. Really that maintenance activity and everything around the administrative responsibilities for maintenance and things like that shrinks to about 25%. So now their effort can be reallocated towards high value business, mission critical types of things, as opposed to putting tapes in servers and all this other kind of stuff that they do on a daily, or trying to acquire new servers and things like that. So the state has stood up in its existing data center, sort of a staging environment of virtualized government private cloud. We actually use VMware vCloud suite to provision servers. We can provision servers very quickly. Takes about 45 seconds to spin up a large instance server, and then the departments can do their SharePoint or their apps or their databases, whatever they need to do. So that is a very important thing for us, because time is a luxury we don't have. We have a lot of systems that are failing, and we need to get them moved into a virtual environment so that we can stabilize them. The second part of the cloud infrastructure for us is that hybrid thing that Cisco was talking about, and also what was alluded to earlier, which is we have various overflow co-location facilities that we use on island to spin up servers and other and we co-locate equipment as well as use managed services. And part of the reason for that is reliability. The state's current network and the state's facilities lack reliability and resiliency at this point in time. So when we go into a co-location facility for our network or for our data center resources, we're getting the advantage of their 5.9, 100% runtime, statistics, their security, a lot of the network connectivity that comes into these locations that we don't already have redundancy in our buildings. And so we step up from, low run times, like in what were previously, like I think our network runtime was about 80% of the time it was running. And now, since we've moved one of our main network nodes and NOC into a managed services facility like SystemMetrics and DR Fortress, we actually our network runtime went up to 4 nines in a year. So we have a lot of advantages to going into the newer architecture and leveraging the resources, that are available to us right now, as we continue to build this out over the next couple of years. The state will build a primary data center, but it'll be highly virtualized, and we will begin to consolidate take our resources out of the existing facilities which are failing. I also have a variety, I would say like a ranch almost of rats on a high fiber diet in some of the buildings. And Hawaiian actually came in and helped us out because they chewed through 24 strands of cable in the tax building, and the tax system was down for half a day, which is millions of dollars in revenue not collected. So thank you, Hawaiian for taking care of that emergency cabling. So that leads me to the next piece, which is sourcing. It's very important that we keep an eye on how we source cloud resources, whether they're in the international cloud, in the domestic cloud, what regions they're in, if it's Amazon in EC2 and that kind of stuff, or if it's on island, because we need to have the people to continue to keep those things running and secure. We have a lot of security constraints, similar to like a bank, but we have criminal justice constraints and HIPAA and a bunch of data that needs to go back and forth, and it needs to be encrypted and it has to have big pipes, and we have to make sure that all this stuff is taken care of and all the privacy information is kept private. But when you do your Office 365 or you do some things in the cloud, it's a question is where is it hosted? Is it hosted on the mainland? What if our internet goes out to one of the islands? Are they not going to be able to get to their email? Is it hosted in Asia? There are some geopolitical things that are coming to play now with all this merger and acquisition activity out there. It's actually affecting us in the decisions we make and the security of our networks and systems. So I would just recommend keeping an eye out for ensuring that you're aligning your decisions with some strategy that goes towards what the exit strategy is of those companies. If they're publicly traded, how they go into the bigger picture and flow upwards in terms of support and reliability, especially if things are going overseas, which they will eventually have a high presence for data center growth and things like that, and whether it's Australia or Southeast Asia. And ensuring that your connections and your pipes and everything for data hosted over there is absolutely secured and and guaranteed and going forward. So those are the kinds of things we're looking at. And also what was mentioned earlier is that there's two trends that primarily affect us, and it's the bandwidth increases and the information storage increase that are occurring. So for our purposes, we look at bandwidth increasing on island, in the state of, it's, generally about 5% a month is what the increase in bandwidth is doing. So that will outstrip a lot of our existing capacity to backhaul out of Hawaii back to, mainland US. And, by, 2018 or something like that. So bringing more trans-Pacific cables to the island, that's always been a capacity thing for us that we've been working on. And the information storage. So I heard this spec that by 2017, information storage will double every 72 hours. And it was they talked about it a little bit in Cisco's presentation this morning, but that's a lot of data being stored. And if we're just talking, the cloud was just introduced in 2006, and now it's 2014, and we're 8 years later, and this stuff's coming in 3 years, in terms of data storage requirements. We need to be prepared. And the only way to do that is to collaborate with the ecosystem of partners, and everybody's working on it together. That's the way we cut costs and we save money, and we go together. That's really the most cost-effective and best way to move forward and continue to leverage the resources we have while building out the ecosystem and driving that capacity into the state of Hawaii.
Well, that's great. So what I hear you saying is what stood out to me from your talk there was 45 seconds to spin up a server nowadays. Yeah. Wow, amazing. And then you're talking reliability rating from 80 to 4 nines, 80% to 4 nines. So that's huge. Jumping that much in a reliability rating. If you look at 99.99%, that's 4 minutes and 30 seconds of downtime that you're allowed in a 30-day period at a 4.9 rating level. If you're looking at 80%, that's huge. And 4 nines is almost intolerable by most businesses right now. So these are some of the things where the case for the change into the cloud actually becomes more compelling with those uptime ratings. If you look at the size of the state organization, you look at the dollars lost for those outages that between the 80 and 99.9%, it becomes very compelling to actually start moving into these more reliable facets there. And one thing that Keone mentioned too was about the security and the vendor. So there's a lot of cloud providers out there, and what I believe Keone was saying is that you just have to be careful about the selection of the cloud providers. Most of the cloud providers are now going to what they call SSA 16, SOC 1 and SOC 2 as a minimum for actually certifying their platform so that it's a little bit safer for and give the customers more comfort. So thank you very much, Keone. And then John, if you...
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Let me start off with kind of where we're at right now and kind of my redefinition of what I think the cloud is. For us, it's really simple. It's servers we don't own, regardless of where they sit. So if they're in a colocation facility, if we buy services, subscription or otherwise, private clouds, public clouds, we define kind of the cloud as anything we don't own. And the second piece of this is we don't want to own anything. We've philosophically taken a position that we really don't want to own the hardware. It is cheaper, faster, as Earl said, the agility piece, to pass that off to someone else and get it when we need it. And so we're at the position now where we do have some in-house apps, and we are moving the last of them out. We've been on this road for quite a while. I think we started back actually in 2005, 2006 timeframe, long before it was called the cloud. And the driver was much different than what's been discussed here. The driver was we were going to rebuild one of our facilities at the data center, and would have cost too much money to rebuild that piece of it. So we're looking for alternatives, and we ended up at DR Fortress, Fred's organization. And so we moved our servers into there, and that was the start of the long march to getting everything out of house. So that was kind of the first piece of it. We got comfortable with not having the servers next to us. The next piece of it came when the economy started going bad, and we got a challenge to reduce our budget by a very large number without any major decrease in services. So when you start doing that, if it's a 5% decrease, you can start looking at it incrementally. When you're talking about a 20 or 30% decrease, you have to rethink how you do the business. And so we started driving down that road. Next thing that went out, actually, frankly, was email. And I think I can ask the question in this house, anybody ever call you up every morning and go, hey, thanks for getting my email to my account, I really appreciate it? It's like the telephone, right? Everybody expects it there. It's a commodity. So we started looking at that, and we moved email out back quite a while ago, back when Microsoft actually called it, instead of Office 365, for those of you who've been around for a while, it was called BPOS. So we started down that road, and we got more comfortable. So basically it was a layer of comfort we kept adding on, kept moving systems out. And I'm here to tell you, every system you move out, it's completely different how the vendor defines their piece of the cloud. From access, to how they set it up on their end, to how you connect to it, everything's different. We don't have two vendors that are the same. So it's something that you have to pay attention to. You have to have, a staff that goes and hunts these pieces down. My staff is here today, and they'll tell you I'm the master at understating how difficult this stuff is. And they can give you the real, how long it takes and how hard it is. Once you get over that hurdle, that's when you start reaping the benefits of the agility piece, because that's when you can call up and go, spin me up a server, and you're down that road. Or, with our HR system that is outsourced, we need to add on another company we just acquired. It's done. Things like that. Once you get over those big hurdles, it makes it much easier to leverage the technology. So that's kind of the direction we're down right now. Like I said, there are drivers as far as money. Everybody knows about that. The time to provision something. Resources. I'm sure everybody here has the same problems we have. There's not enough resources on the island that has the right knowledge to be able to do all the things you want to do. So you have to leverage what's there. And then last piece, which everybody thinks about but doesn't get defined a lot, is what I call angst. It's the worry that, going back to the email, right? The email system's down. Frankly, by moving it out, first of all, it improves the reliability, but second of all, I pass off that concern to someone else. So it's as I said, we have moved all our major systems out with the exception of one. We're in the process of hunting for a application now, and within the next year or so, we will have moved that application out also. So it's for us, it's been a long road. There's lots of twists to be aware of. Huge payback as far as the management of IT. And frankly, what we've turned into is business solution providers instead of IT people. We let somebody else do the day-to-day details of the technology, of the servers, and we actually work with the businesses to provide solutions.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, John. So some of the takeaways that from John's conversation is here is gave a very good definition of what the cloud is. It's anything that you don't own, and that statement is actually pretty far-reaching. So it could be the telephones that you have. Some of you that are on hosted voice over IP system, that's actually a cloud application. Anything that you do on your mobile phone, you don't own that app, someone else does, but it's running in the background. That's something you don't own, and that's also considered the cloud. Even John alluded to the infrastructure, the data center. We're not, he outsources that, doesn't have to worry about that. That's actually a more mechanical form of cloud, but you're actually outsourcing that. And so the next question would be more as, so I'm a CIO and I hear all this great stuff about the cloud. How do I build the case for management, or how did I justify getting into, be interesting to hear how you got into convincing your management to actually push forward into this endeavor instead of the traditional, and break that mind frame of, hey, we have to keep it in site and on site and run it the old traditional way. And Keone?
Yeah, I think we're used to doing, business justifications and write-ups about, how do you, what you're going to spend, what's the return, and, what do you save, and all those other types of things. At the state, it's a little different because the funding sources are, come from two primary sources. They're either bond funds, bonds that are sold, and we have capital improvement project money, which typically or traditionally has paid for concrete, right? And so far as I know, there's no concrete-based cloud services, servers.
Not yet.
Yeah, so that makes it difficult to do anything as a service or purchase any managed services, right? So we have to use our OpEx or our O&M budget, which is general funds, which is typically cash. So orienting the mindset of the directors and the powers that be and the finance committees and things has been around how do you create value in the cycle of what that service would provide if it's 1 to 2 years, 3 to 5 years, and show them that there's value for that recurring managed investment. And really that argument is sold by the increase in security, increase in reliability and things when you get a managed service. And when we move things, and we're moving things more towards managed services or as a service, IT as a utility, we can connect the dots for the folks and the decision makers that, even though we have a recurring expense of this, we're always current. We don't have to go back and pay for, 12 versions, of software and things like that. Our skill sets are always current. It's more efficient, it's cost effective, people have more time to spend with other people, because at the end of the day in the IT service, industry, I feel it's better to have our people talking to people than our people staring at a green screen all day, and keying stuff in paper and things like that. And we provide more value to our organization to make up that baseline maintenance O&M cost by putting our people in front of other people and that relationship building. So that's kind of how we, get things approved, and it can be a long process. The other aspect of it was the state just didn't have a choice. We had to move on to something else because we don't have enough power in the building or enough generators or enough UPSs or anything, to get it done. And the buildings are in tsunami zones and underground, and we have a lot of issues. So this is one of the ways that they're able to say, oh, it's a cheap out. It's like someone saying, your IT budget's $50,000, what are you going to do? You say, well, I can tell you, for $50,000, we're going to the cloud because there's no other way to do any IT services for $50,000. If one, server is going to cost, server project is going to cost that much. So it makes the choices a little easier and a little more narrow, but that business justification, the value, don't underestimate the value of putting people in front of people and providing a service and transforming the internal culture to a service culture. That has a lot of lasting residual value.
Okay, well, great. So that's an interesting perspective. So basically, the justification for the cloud was actually addressing all these challenges that were out there. The cloud actually addressed that and the infrastructure. So that was great. So John, so a little bit, like the two panel members is great because you have your public sector, your state government, and then you have private sector. So it's be interesting to see the two views on how they justified it. Good, John?
Okay, I think I mentioned it in the previous discussion. We were actually driven to outsource because we were going through the rebuild, taking a look at the CapEx budget. We basically didn't want to build a new facility, so we're looking for options on what to do. So that drove us initially out there. The second one, as I said, when the economy started getting bad, it was a financial driver. So yeah, we initially did put together some pretty basic cost sheets. What we realized, though, there's a huge intangible in there. The intangible of time, the intangible of the angst piece I mentioned, the agility piece. So once we got the first couple projects along the way, there wasn't really any more question about it. What the questions are and what really we continue to work with the CFO on is questions about the security piece, questions about ability to certainly on the financial side, to be able to track all the data as it moves around, things like that. But as far as being able to justify moving it out, once that floodgate broke, it became pretty easy, and that driver for the floodgate really came from the executive side of the house.
Okay, well, great. So basically, you were chased into the cloud. And then that's where this cloud, like we talk about hosting a revolution and going into the cloud. If you're not already there, you're going to be there. Very soon, whether you like it or not, to address some challenges, just the way things are going. And it's interesting to hear that business case of how, and in both cases, the similarities are that there were challenges that needed to be addressed, and the cloud did that very well and very efficiently. And that's going back to that return on agility piece of it. It's not just the ROI, but actually addressing these challenges that would have taken months and if not years to actually address in the conventional method of yesteryear. Okay, so right now we're going to open up the floor to some questions for the panel. Feel free to ask any questions. We'll have someone coming around with a microphone. And actually, you can ask the panel members or myself any questions you like regarding the topic. Great.
How do you overcome the bandwidth of the internet? slow. Everything's slow.
And you're absolutely right. We're actually seeing that right now, and frankly, it's an issue of basically ensuring you do have the bandwidth you need. And yes, the internet's slow, and it comes down to buying enough pipe. So that becomes where you shift some of the resources into. What used to be really small pipe got us by. Now we need larger, not only for the systems, but in addition to the systems, people are utilizing the internet much more at work, at home, and as a company, we do not restrict the internet from our employees. So we let the employees use the internet. Our position has always been, since we made it available, is if someone's spending too much time on the internet, it's a management issue. They don't have enough to do, and their managers aren't managing properly. We see huge benefit in letting people use the internet for both work and for other reasons. There's getting familiar with the technology. And in that respect, we've actually provided some other technologies that people can actually use at work. But bandwidth is an issue. We continue to track that. And 5 years ago, bandwidth was an issue. We threw bandwidth at it. It continues to be, and I think it will always be.
Yeah. Bandwidth is interesting because we used to run off one line that ran through UH. I think the entire state was running on one 100 meg circuit that was going out to the internet. So we upgraded our backbone, our core backbone network to 10 gig from 100 or 1 gig, and I think it's a 10-fold increase. And the question was, nobody's using it, right? Like, why do we need to upgrade? And we said, well, trust me, we need that for reliability. We need a higher class of equipment. We need to be able to manage this stuff, and it's going to work. And now the thing's, spiked. And so all of these computers, turns out, that were on the network, that were sleeping, nice and dormant, that had all these Trojan variants and viruses and other types of things, woke up once we had the big pipes. And now we upgraded our internet to 300 meg, and then it spiked from 8 to 5 at 300 megs. And then we had to go upgrade to 500 megs. Then we put on, a security tap on the wire to see what's going on, what applications are running, and now we actually have some visibility in how the traffic is, what is being used, and what's happening in departments. And departments don't even know sometimes that their computers are doing these types of stuff. So, once we get some measurement, we can start to tune it, and get it down for the legitimate business traffic that's going to need to travel. But, outside of that, it doesn't matter how fast the local loop is, we've got to get all the traffic off the island. And that capacity is finite, right, at this moment. And everybody uses it, whether it's banking or government or military, everybody's on the same exact fiber going across the ocean. So getting more cables landed here is, paramount. When we get more cable systems landed, they land them at higher gigabit bandwidths, like 100 gig technology, and probably be 1,000 gig or whatever that, they call that the next thing next. But we have to keep utilizing it, and the utilization becomes a driver for companies like Hawaiian Tel and other folks to get cables here and build capacity and buy more IRUs and all of the other kind of stuff. So some of the responsibility of the state that we take on in economic development really is making requests of industry and the partners in the ecosystem to come up with these better services that we will leverage for our critical infrastructure and communications, and that drives them to put new things in place. So, I know that Hawaiian Tel upgraded all the CDN networks and did some other kinds of things like that for bandwidth. People are increasingly using it, and we have all these mobile devices connected and things like that. But it is an issue. Bandwidth is an issue. It needs to be looked at now, sooner than later, because by 2025 it'll be, or 2018 it'll be too late. We'll be fully saturated. So if everybody keeps an eye on it and keeps consuming, the services, keeps trying to upgrade the services, we will be in a better position collectively to have faster, connection speeds.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, so they're actually, their businesses are both competing with my Netflix downloads. So, 500 meg to the house, that's kind of, competing with what's coming into the island too. So very good question on the bandwidth and the constraints around that. Next question.
CNN reports that the Target CIO recently was forced to resign because of the data breaches. Could you address the issue of data security on the cloud?
Take that?
Okay. Well, the data security issues on the cloud. Okay. Well, with anything, it's a connected system, and like the two panel members were talking about before, security in the cloud is paramount, and you have data breaches that can happen if you're not vigilant on that. So the cloud providers are becoming more vigilant on these types of security measures. They're leveraging those, and that's where you start getting into like security software as a service type applications where people are leveraging security. Security companies are going into the cloud and growing rapidly to actually counteract these things with connected systems. But really, it's not just the cloud where the security is. It's actually even on the physical servers and the conventional platforms that you have right now. So whether you own it or someone else owns it, that's something that's definitely out there. And security companies, if you look at the growth of different security companies and their portfolios, the security is a huge issue. If you look at Target and what happened to them, that can happen anywhere, whether it's in the cloud or even on their own prem. So very good question, but did you? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, security is a major area of focus for us. I mean, at any given time, we have about 61 major security initiatives going on to remedy and, fix a lot of the, situations that we observe on our network, whether it's the endpoints and the PCs that are out there running Windows XP, with all those exploits, available there, or, and replacing that to putting, data loss prevention gear in. We have our IPS gear, we have firewalls, we have next-gen firewalls. We're putting all the pieces in place in the identity management and some, secure app delivery and things like that. So, it's a big responsibility. It's a shared responsibility, essentially. I mean, the cloud provider only does so much, for their part of it. But if you're, and a lot of them are offering, like at least in the Microsoft cloud, they offer their own little private cloud inside of that. They have a shared cloud. They have data at rest encryption. They have, they encrypt the data in motion. They do a lot that's compliant with, criminal justice or, HIPAA and other types of things like out there for that. But, security is a growing problem and a growing concern. The more connected that everybody, gets on it, and it just requires everyone looking at it. And I try to say, security is a trade-off, really, because it only takes one incident. It just takes one phishing scam or one executable to get into your network and harvest the data, and social security numbers are gone. So the cost of each social security number is estimated right now across all the states is about $200 per record, like exposed, right? So if we have 1.4 million social security numbers, I mean that's all nearly $300 million liability, right? That's out there. Credit cards is a whole different thing. I mean they took millions of credit card numbers right in the Target deal, but trying to force security, SLAs, warranties, guarantees, whatever you do in your service environment and your managed services portfolio in terms of how you negotiate those things, has got to be part on the provider, part on you, and you just got to stay on top of it, because the best you can hope for in this context is you're never going to have a fully secure network. The only fully secure network is a network that's not connected to anything, I mean, essentially. And even then it's not secure because people come in and out, right? So the best we hope for is a controlled environment, or we're saying a controlled network and a controlled environment where we can measure everything that's going on in that network and detect things soon, and hopefully prevent a lot of things. But a controlled network is sort of the best we can hope for, and security is like our aspirational goal. You have to have a 100% secure environment, but that takes dollars, and it takes a lot of focus and attention. And the more eyes on it, whether it's through managed service partners monitoring your security, or third-party other vendors and stuff in the cloud that are interacting with you, you have a better shot at keeping everything, clean and secure.
Great.
Yeah, just a couple of quick words. I think the first place, frankly, when you start with security, is you have to understand what information that you have that's critical, that if you lost it, it would affect your business operations or regulatory things. That's entirely key because, frankly, as Keone said, you can't protect everything. So you have to protect what's important. And when you do that, it's not just the systems, it's not just the communication path. It starts with the user, even before he touches a machine, and it goes all the way to the system. So you got to look at a tiered approach, but first, you got to understand what's important to protect. And then you put in the appropriate measures at that point.
Okay, great. Well, great question. We also just want to remind you that we do have some security vendors down in the expo area that actually can maybe go into those a little bit more in depth for you as well. So we're out of time, but I wanted to thank the panel members for answering all the questions. And so John Harris and Keone Kale, let's give them a hand.